Emma had always thought babysitting was one of the easiest jobs in the world. You'd think that after years of watching children, you would start to get bored. But there was always something new about each job, each house, each child. And when Mrs. Thompson called that evening, Emma didn't hesitate to accept the offer. It was the perfect arrangement. She could work and make some extra money, and besides, Daniel was a quiet kid. She had babysat for the Thompsons many times before. This was, however, the night that would change everything. When Emma arrived at the Thompsons' large house at the edge of town, a strange feeling settled over her. The home was beautiful but intimidating, like a fortress surrounded by tall trees. The grand entrance felt more like a mansion, with a towering front door and massive windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. The house was old, with polished wood floors that creaked underfoot and long hallways that twisted out of sight. Mrs. Thompson greeted her at the door, hurried and flustered, as if something was on her mind but she didn't want to say it. "I'm so sorry for the last-minute notice, Emma," she said, her hands trembling just a bit. "Daniel is already asleep. He might say something strange if he wakes up, but just ignore it. You know how kids can get with their wild imaginations." Round pushpin. Emma, feeling a bit confused, nodded and smiled. "Of course, I'm sure he's fine. Don't worry about it. Thanks again, Mrs. Thompson said, her voice strained. "We'll be back by midnight." And with that, Mrs. Thompson hurried out, leaving Emma alone in the house. Emma made her way to the living room, the house oddly quiet. The air felt heavy, as if it had been locked away for years, untouched by the outside world. She didn't mind it at first, but as she stood there, waiting, something about the silence felt off. The walls seemed to whisper secrets, and the flickering lights only added to the tension in the air. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mrs. Thompson. "If Daniel says anything strange, don't worry. He's been having nightmares lately. Just try to get him to sleep." Emma gave a small, reassuring smile, reading the message, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling growing inside her. This was supposed to be just another babysitting job. Yet, something didn't feel right. She sighed and decided to make herself comfortable on the couch. The TV hummed quietly in the background as she tried to relax. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the stillness of the house. After a while, Emma began to feel the weight of the house pressing down on her. It wasn't the darkness that bothered her, it was the oppressive silence, the stillness that felt unnatural. At 9:30 p.m., she heard it. A faint whisper, coming from upstairs. "Emma." She froze. The voice was soft, almost indistinct, but it was there. It wasn't the wind or a passing car. It sounded like someone calling her name, almost as if the house itself were speaking. "Emma." Her heart raced. Was it Daniel? Was he having a bad dream? She wasn't sure, but the voice sounded strange. A shiver ran down her spine. Standing slowly, Emma made her way upstairs. The soft whispering seemed to come from the end of the hallway, toward Daniel's room. It was faint, and she could barely make out the words, but she had to go check. As she approached the door to Daniel's room, she hesitated. The door was slightly ajar, and in the dim light from the hallway, she could see Daniel sitting up in bed. His small frame was hunched forward, and his eyes were wide open, staring at something in the far corner of the room. "Daniel," Emma called softly, stepping inside. The little boy didn't move or acknowledge her. His eyes remained fixed on the farthest corner of the room, and he didn't even blink. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she moved closer to him. "Hey, buddy, are you all right?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he whispered, almost to himself, "He's here." Emma's stomach churned with unease. "Who's here, Daniel?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, trying to see what he was staring at. Daniel didn't look at her. Instead, he pointed toward the far corner of the room, toward the closet, where the door was slightly ajar. Emma froze, staring at the closet for a long moment. She felt an inexplicable pull toward it. "Who is it, Daniel?" she asked again, her voice shaky. But Daniel just whispered, "He doesn't like it when the door is closed. He gets mad." A chill ran down Emma's spine. She stepped closer to the closet, trying to hide the unease building inside her. The room seemed to grow colder. She walked slowly toward the closet and reached for the door to shut it, thinking that maybe it was just an overactive imagination. As her hand touched the doorknob, she noticed something strange. A dark shadow seemed to slip out of sight just as she touched the wood. Her hand froze. There was something in the closet, but when she opened it, there was nothing but the usual piles of clothes. But something was off. The air around the closet felt thick, as if it were heavy with something unseen. She forced a smile, trying to reassure herself as she closed the door. "It's fine, Daniel. You're just having a bad dream," she whispered. But Daniel's voice, low and trembling, made her pause. "Don't close it, Emma. He doesn't like that. He'll get angry." Emma, confused and a little scared, didn't know how to respond. She nodded quickly, tucking Daniel back into bed and pulling the blanket tightly around him. "It's all right, Daniel," she whispered again. As she left the room, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The house felt darker, colder, and the silence was now deafening. She went downstairs, trying to calm her nerves. Maybe it was just the stress of the job, or maybe Daniel was just scared of the dark, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As she sat back down on the couch, she heard it again. The whispers. They were louder now, coming from the hallway. Emma. A strange, cold shiver crawled down her spine as she stood again. Slowly, she made her way to the stairs, her steps quiet against the wooden floorboards. The whispers grew louder with each step she took. Emma. And then, she heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps. Heavy footsteps, deliberate and slow, moving down the stairs from above. It wasn't Daniel. She knew it wasn't him. The steps were too slow, too methodical, and they echoed in the emptiness of the house. Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. She turned slowly and started to walk back to the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. She wasn't sure what she was walking toward, but she couldn't bring herself to go back upstairs. The house was alive in a way she couldn't explain, as if the walls themselves were watching her. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she reached the top of the stairs. And then she saw it. Daniel's room door was wide open. The closet door was ajar once again. The whispering was louder now, more insistent, and her pulse raced. She rushed toward the room, and the moment she stepped inside, her breath hitched. The bed was empty. Daniel was gone. Panic surged through her body, but she didn't know what to do. Where was he? The door to the closet was wide open, and the shadowy figure, towering and ominous, stood in the darkness. Its form seemed to distort and shift in the faint moonlight. "Daniel." Emma's voice was trembling, but there was no answer. The figure didn't move. It only stood, watching her with its glowing eyes. The air grew colder still, and she could feel the presence of something malevolent. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body was paralyzed with fear. The figure moved toward her, its presence looming like a storm cloud. "Daniel," she whispered again, her voice barely audible. The shadow seemed to melt into the darkness, disappearing into the closet. A low growl reverberated through the room, the walls shaking with the force of the sound. Emma had no time to react. She bolted out of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She ran down the stairs, her mind clouded with panic. She tried to call Mrs. Thompson, but the call went straight to voicemail. She could hear footsteps behind her. Slow, methodical, always one step behind. Finally, she reached the front door, slamming it shut behind her as she stepped outside. She didn't know what she had just seen, but she couldn't go back. Not after what had happened. Not after what she had heard. Not after what she had felt. Weeks later, Emma learned that the Thompsons had suddenly left town, without any warning or explanation. The house remained empty. But the neighbors told a different story. Every night, from the upstairs bedroom, the closet door would creak open. And from within, faint whispers would call out her name.